Joining us now with instant reaction, our NHL analyst, Alan May. Alan, what an exhibition. It was anything but an exhibition of skill nonetheless here. Boston's season coming to a close here in overtime of Game 7. I just want to roll it out for you here. I mean, this was a lot to digest in the final moments of regulation and then in overtime. What did you see between these two in the decisive moments of a season?
I just thought that the Boston Bruins started to play prevent defense, and it does not seem to work in any league, whether it's the NFL or the NHL. And as they sat back, the Panthers just kept pounding against the wall and eventually broke it, crumbled it, pushed it down, tore it down, put a hole in it, whatever, tied it up. And they just played with so much conviction in this game. I thought the amount of intensity, the tenacity that they played with, the physical play, in the end, it wore down the Bruins. They wore down their top players. They wore down their defensemen, and they were like a battering ram. And eventually they got through the gates, and they win this series with just a relentless attitude, a style of play. And I think it was just spectacular. It's so incredible that this happens to the teams that are always the best ever.
And we're going to go there right now because this season was historic. The most points, the most wins in an NHL season ever by these Boston Bruins. They had 43 more points than these Panthers did during the regular season. That earns you nothing when the playoffs roll around. Is there an extra weight to that these teams have had to bear? I believe the 2013 Blackhawks were the last President's Trophy winners to go on to win it all. What is that weight, and why does it break certain teams, historic ones, as you said?
I think that you play at the ceiling all season long, and you're doing so well, and you believe in yourselves, and you do everything right all the way. But you need to have luck. You have to have right coaching, right management, right roster. And then when it gets down to it, you have to have the right game plan, the right systems. But one of the biggest things that not enough people pay attention, myself included, is the health and welfare of players. Like, how are they doing? And the Bruins look like they were beat up as it went in. Krejci missed time. Bergeron just gets back in a few games ago, and they weren't at 100%. When you look at Bergeron's minutes today, he wasn't at 100. He only played 17, 15 or something the last time I looked. I may be wrong, but I think what happens is there's a burden. And then as players start to get beat down, wear down, and have these injuries are so important. You have to have the luck of bounces, but you have to have the luck of injuries as well. And obviously, the Bruins didn't have enough luck going on. I still can't believe we saw this, but we saw this a few years ago with the 4-game sweep of the Columbus Blue Jackets against the best ever at that time, Tampa Bay Lightning. So I'm not surprised. The only bad thing about this is having to listen to the curse of being the best in the National Hockey League during the course of the regular season.
I'm sure if you offered it to any team next season, they would take that and wear that weight throughout the regular season, as it is a celebration. And then it comes to a close here for Boston. I sort of want to get at the here and now, because that's big picture of what this season might have meant for Boston. And zooming in here on this series, this is the first time that the Bruins have lost 3 straight games on home ice since 2021. December 14th, 2021 was the last time they lost 3 consecutive games on home ice. What did you see within this series in terms of the ebbs and flows of momentum between games?
I just look at how the Florida Panthers played as the end of the season went on. And, they went with Adin Hill. They ended up switching, but they went in like gritting their teeth, playing as hard as they could, being relentless. And that never say die, just to get into the playoffs. And then they get in, and you have to play the Boston Bruins. So most people would have cowered at that. But it's the easiest way to pull your team together is to be the underdog. There's no pressure on the Panthers. They could have lost tonight. Everything would have been fine. Everyone would have a pat in the back, and hey, we'll get them next year. We'll be better. But they had a lot of things go right for them in this. They were just so relentless. The style of play, the energy that their top players had. When you look at Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, Bennett, they're just 3 of the most relentless, hardworking, all-in players you'll ever see in the National Hockey League. And they just kept working and working and working. So I just look at it there. It was a young team that no matter what happens, we're going to go for the win. We're going to do what we can to be the best and take down the best. And that's what they did. The Boston Bruins, on the other hand, they played at such a high emotional and ceiling all season long, an incredible level of play all season long. And the only way really to go is down, because it's so hard. It's a war of attrition in the playoffs. And once again, there's bruises, there's blood, there's stitches, you name it. There's just all types of things that can go wrong in the playoffs. And unfortunately for the Boston Bruins, everything seemed to go wrong later in this series.
Florida, after squeaking in, maybe finally playing up to what they expected after that addition of Matthew Tkachuk. And then I move on to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. I asked you off air if Leafs fans were excited coming out of this overtime, and you gave me an interesting answer there. Take me inside that matchup. How do these two teams look at one another heading into the second round, as we will get the jump quite quickly here coming out of this series?
Well, the biggest thing with the Florida Panthers is they're on a roll right now. They were on a roll at the end of the season to get into the playoffs. They fought their way in. They were at one point, I don't know if it was the last month, but within a month of the season, they were down 14 points and they got into the playoffs. And, you know, they are relentless on the forecheck. They attack your goaltender. They bump and bruise. They bring you into the fight, and they play a tenacious style. And all of a sudden, Sergei Bobrovsky's back to playing all-world style of hockey. So as the Toronto Maple Leafs look, you know, good thing they don't have to play the Boston Bruins. They don't have to play against David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, but they have to play against one of the best thugs in the National Hockey League, and that's Matthew Tkachuk. So their defensemen are going to be under siege the entire series, and I really like the matchup no matter what. I thought Toronto was going to win that first series. Their forwards are better than they've ever been. They were relentless. They were tough on pucks, and that's how they won the game last night. When I look at where their weakness is, their goaltender's still unproven. There's still question marks with him. They had to protect him last night against the Tampa Bay Lightning, but I think their D are a huge question mark. When I look at the two series, I give favor to the forwards of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The high-end guys, though, of the Florida Panthers are gritty. They're relentless. They're dirty. They'll do anything to win. But when I go to the defensemen, I really like to look at the defensemen on the Florida Panthers over the aging, beat-up, not so fast Toronto Maple Leafs defensemen. And then in goaltending, you know, both these guys stepped up at the right time, Samsonov and Bobrovsky. But I think right now, Bobrovsky, he won his team. He kept them in this game tonight, and he got them to the next round. So I'm going to give a slight goaltending edge to the Florida Panthers, and I still think there's question marks. There's way too much pressure in Toronto, and I think that's going to wear them down ultimately, like the Boston Bruins were wore down tonight by the pressure of being the President's Trophy champions.
A couple of big-time stops there in overtime by Bobrovsky early on. Saw a couple hot pucks at the net. He makes the stops, and now they are moving on. It's going to be a great series to watch. I know it's going to be broken down in Boston and far beyond in the world of hockey here, but let's put the final punctuation on the season here for the Bruins. A historic season that was. We're always wondering what's up next, especially when a season comes to an abrupt end like this. Some decisions to be made in the offseason. Is this a window closing on Boston? What do the next couple months look like this offseason?
Not a chance with the Boston Bruins. They have so many great hockey players, and you know they need to be healthy. The biggest question marks for the Bruins are going to be the health, or does Bergeron play at 37 years old? Does he continue to play? He's played one of the hardest styles of hockey, the best defensive player, in my opinion, in the history of the National Hockey League. David Krejci comes back over playing in his homeland for one more season. He's 36, turning 37. Where are they going to be? They're going to have to fill the void at center. If those two guys retire, that's the first and foremost. They've got to take care of that. There's money available, but they've got some really good players that they've got to get under contract. Dmitry Orlov was a stud most of this series. He was big tonight. But you look at, they've got to sign different players right now. So the biggest thing, do they have enough money? That's always the question in the salary cap era. And, you know, Hampus Lindholm needs a new contract. He's going to be their number one, and specifically their only priority to get to July 1st. And then after that, everything else is fair game. Dmitry Orlov will have to sit in the sidelines and wait to see all the other Bruins get played. Taylor Hall's in that. Tyler Bertuzzi, and they'll see if they can make this work and go at it one more time. But I think they're going to need some help down the middle of the ice.
Well, it is end scene for this act in Boston, and the show rolls on down to the Sunshine State. Alan, we appreciate you as always. Going to be a blast bringing it home here down the stretch.
Take care. See you soon.
All right, here's a look at the head-to-head between these two, Panthers and Leafs. First postseason meeting all-time, history versus the new guys. Not so new, but it's going to be a blast to watch these two teams go head-to-head. Our Alan May breaking it down, front-end, back-end, advantage front-end. Going to the Leafs, advantage back-end. He's going to give that to the Panthers. Maple Leafs took down the Lightning 4-2 in the first round. The show goes on for the Florida Panthers.